We are going to start the history's first chapter, second part video. And in this video, we are going to discuss the outbreak of revolution that happened in France during the 1789. And in previous video, we have discussed was the economic problems of the France, was the how the society was divided there. And now, if we talk about the outbreak of revolution, it start with the process of increment of taxes because the people of France were not able to pay the taxes. They were having some economic distress, and at this particular time, King has decided that he is going to increase the taxes. So, first, we need to understand what was the process of tax increment in the France at that time. So, whenever France monarch want to increase the taxes, he don't have power to impose taxes according to his will alone. He had to call a meetings, and that meeting is known as a state general meeting. That means the king is unable to take decision of taking improving the taxes or increasing the taxes in the France. And this process, he has to call up for the meeting that is known as a state generals meeting. This is a political body in which every state had certain number of representatives into it. And on the 5th May 1789, Louis XVI called an assembly of the state generals to pass the proposal of new taxes. So it was the date, and it is 5th May of 1789 when Louis XVI called the assembly to just discuss the proposal of new taxes that he wanted to increase. Before we go far forward, we just need to understand how the state generals were meeting holding in the France. So basically, there were three states in France, and in a state generals meeting, first state were having 300 representative. And if we talk about second state, that were nobles, they were having 300 representative. And the third state, the common people, were having 600 representative. They all got gathered at a place that was known as Palace of Versailles. When they gathered, the first and second state were sitting in front of both states, and the third state members were standing behind the first and second state member. They don't have right to sit equal to the first and second state members. Now, the process was that every state has a state was assigned as per state per vote. As like first state will have one vote, second state will have one vote, and third state will have one vote. Third state opposed this, and they demanded that each and every representative that are gathered in the Palace of Versailles, everyone should have one vote. Why they were asking for it? Because if you look here, the number of representative that different states are having, if we talk about second state, they are having 300 representative, first state 300 representative, and third state 600 representative. If you add both first and second state, then they will be equal to the third state. And we all know that these two states are not going to give any kind of taxes to king because they were privileged and they don't have to pay the taxes to the king. And that is why the people of third state demanded that each and every representative should have one vote in this meeting, and by this they could at least can be equal to the both states, and that is how they can deny this proposal of increment of taxes. Now, but when king rejected the idea of per person per vote. Then the third state member walked out of the assembly and they started protesting against the king. They gathered at a place indoor tennis court and declared themselves as a national assembly and took oath that they are going to draft a constitution that will limit the power of monarch. It means that the third state member are now going to draft a constitution, and its purpose was to limit the power of monarch. Okay, now was only the third state walked out of that? No, some of the member that was the part of first and second state, they also walked out of that meeting and led third state. Some prominent members like Mirabio and Abesius started to lead third state against king. While the National Assembly was busy at Versailles drafting a constitution due to the bad harvest, the prices of essential goods rose, and then the king ordered his troops to move into the Paris. And after the orders, the people of France demolished the Bastille on 14 July 1789. The people of France were in great economic distress. We all know that there was bad harvest, the rose population was higher than previous years, and to feed this population they need much more food grains, and due to the bad harvest they were not getting the food grains, the amount of food grains that they wanted. And the representative of each state were busy at Palace of Versailles because they were drafting constitution for the France. And this process, the king ordered his troop to move to the Paris, and people understood that the king has ordered the troops to open fire on the people, and that is why, to retaliate the troops to protect themselves, the people started to attack on offices, to raid on offices, on the police station, on the palaces in search of ammunition. And in this process, the people of France demolished Bastille on 14 July 1789. And due to the revolts that were occurring in the most of the France, most of the part of the France, Louis XVI recognized National Assembly as a supreme power of France. He stated that now he is going to be under the National Assembly and he will obey all the suggestion that National Assembly will give to him. On 4th August 1789, the Assembly passed a decree abolish feudal system of obligation and taxes. All the other taxes, all the other feudal system, all the other feudal dues, the church tax, everything was abolished. And now the member of clergy were too forced to give their privileges. They have to give up their privileges. Like they were collecting the taxes, they have to give up that, and like they have to give up all the lands that church have been acquired since law so many times. Okay. Now at this point of time, when Louis XVI recognized National Assembly, France ultimately became the constitutional monarch. What is it? When a country are having constitution that is when a country is having king that is bound by the constitution of that country, then we will call the country as a constitutional monarch. And there is first point: the National Assembly completed and drafted the Constitution of France in 1789, and its main objective was to limit the power of monarch. The constitution was completed in 1789. Its main objective was that they wanted to limit the power. They wanted to limit the power of king. And now the power was divided as legislature, executive, and judiciary. Okay. So here we can clearly see that this was the based on separation of power. I would ask you that which political thinker gave this idea of separation of power. Now, but the problem was the France became the constitutional monarch. France started voting into his country, but the citizens were divided into two parts. As like men above 25 and those men who paid the taxes equal to the 3 days of laborer wages will be considered as active citizens, and only these active citizens are going to elect electors. Okay, look, first there will be active citizens, then there will be electors, and then these electors will elect the members of legislative assembly. That means the people of France, or at this particular time constitutional monarch, France was having an indirect elections. Okay, now after this people were entitled by the rights like freedom of speech. When the country became constitutional monarch, lots of people got rights, and majority of men got this right, not the women, like freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, equality before law. These kinds of law were entitled to the men at that political time. At that particular time, we have talked about active citizens. Apart from these citizens, remaining citizens was classified as passive citizens. And now, if we move ahead, there were some symbols, some important symbol I have selected. Like first one here is uh, the bundle of rods or fasces. One rod can be easily broken, but not the entire bundle. Strength lies in unity. This symbol says that if you are united, you could do anything. You could change monarch or anything. But if you are fighting against anything alone, then there are might chances that you could lose. Next, broken chain, and its meaning is this. Sorry, broken chain, that those who are free now. Okay. Now, if we talk about the red cap, it means that cap worn by a slave upcoming upon becoming free. Whenever any slave becomes free, he wore this kind of caps. Now, France abolished the monarchy and became a republic. After some time, when the things didn't went as they have planned, now the French people decided they are going to abolish monarchy and they will become a republic country. Here, Louis XVI had signed the constitution, and he entered into a secret negotiation with the king of Prussia. Look, no, none of any autocratic power will want to rule according to someone. And that is what Louis XVI wanted. He don't want to rule under the National Assembly. And Prussia was a country who is going to help Louis XVI from it. National Assembly somehow got to know about it and voted in April 1792 and declared war against Prussia and Austria. Merciless was a song which was composed by poet Roget del Ailse, and this became the anthem of France. What is this song? This song, actually, when the war was declared against Prussia and Austria, the people of France saw this war as against of autocratic governments, and they started taking participate into it. And the and when the common people started participating in it, they need something to unite it, to be united, and this song Marsalis united them. As we all know, whenever the war is going on, there will be some economic difficulty, and slowly economic difficulty was pervaded in France, and most of the people wanted to carry forward the movement because only richer members get political rights. We talk about French Revolution. French Revolution was not stopped at that political time. At that time, okay, because lots of people were not able to vote, and they didn't get the right the richer section of member got. So that is why the less prosperous men, the less prosperous people who were living in the France started to protest against the constitutional monarch, constitutional government. And in this process, they made some political groups, political clubs. One such group was Jacobin. It was the most famous political club in the France at that particular time. Jacobin name was on the name of Saint Jacob who lives in Paris. These groups belonged to less prosperous section of the society, and its leader was Maximilian Robespierre. They just wanted to be looked different from the richer section of the society. And to look different from fashionable section of the society, they started wearing long striped trousers so that they could be different from those people. In this process, they were known as sans-culottes because the richer section of society were wearing knee breeches and they were not wearing the knee breeches. And sans-culottes means that those who are not wearing the knee breeches. On the morning of 10th August, Jacobins stormed the palace of Tuileries and massacred the king's guard and held the king himself as hostage for several hours. What happened? The Jacobins attacked the palace of Tuileries where the king lives, massacred king's guard who will protect the king, and they make hostage king for a several hours. And after this, republic was established in the France. Royal family was voted to imprison, and later they were convicted, the king and queen, at 21st Jan 1793. From now onwards, when the Jacobins attacked the Tuileries and they removed king from here, and they make the France as fully republic country, from now all the men that are above the 21 years of age, regardless of their wealth, whether they are poor or rich, they got the right to vote. Okay. Now, after Jacobins started their government, actually his leader, Maximilian Robespierre, His reign was referred as reign of terror, and Maximilian Robespierre reign was started from 1973 and till 1974, and we refer this time as reign of terror. Why was this? Because Robespierre followed a policy of severe control and punishment. He wanted to control everything, and he punished those who were not agree with his thoughts. Anyone who did not agree with the methods of him was arrested, imprisoned, and tried by the Revolutionary Tribunal, and if found guilty, then guillotined. So basically, what was happening there? The Robespierre, anyone who didn't agree with the methods of him, they were arrested, they were imprisoned, and after that, if they found guilty, they were guillotined, they were somehow massacred by the Robespierre. Robespierre has massacred lots of people in France during this time. Okay, so now some Robespierre adopted an economic policy that was he was controlling all the things into it, as like law on maximum ceiling on wages and prices. He decided the maximum prices of wages and goods prices, that no one is going to ask for more money from that has been fixed. Okay, meat and bread were ration, is it's mean that not every people got to use it. Peasants were forced to transport their grain to the cities and sell it at a price fixed by the government. Peasants had to transport their food grains, and they have to sell their food grains at a price that has been fixed by the government, whether they are getting any profit or they are having some loss from it. They just have to follow the prices that has been fixed by the government. To maintain equality, Robespierre introduced a bread that was known as equality bread, which was made from whole wheat, and it is known as in French pain de aigle. And every citizen have to eat this bread, apart from the good quality of bread. Apart from the economic policies that Robespierre has, Robespierre converted the church building into the barracks and offices, and he shut down the churches. For maintaining equality, every man and woman is now citizen and citoyenne of France. Previously, the richer section of society were known as Sir and Madam, and now they all French men and women will known as citizen and citoyenne, whether they are belonging from richer section of society, whether they are belonging from poor section of society. Finally, its reign was abolished, and he was arrested and convicted by the court in 1794 July. He was arrested, and next day he got the same treatment that he had given to several people in France during his reign. Now, what happened after it? A directory rules France. France representative decided that they will make a directory. They will make a group of people of France, of 5 members, that will rule France. The fall of Jacobins government allowed the wealthier middle class to seize the power. Maximilian Robespierre was a leader from Jacobin group, and he make a government of Jacobin. When Maximilian Robespierre was convicted and killed, then the wealthier middle classes who had power, who had money, they just seized the power. and a new constitution was introduced which denied the voting right of non-propertied section of the society. Now onwards, the non-propertied section of society will not have any kind of voting right. After this, the wealthier class of society, the wealthier middle class, make a directory or appointed a directory, an executive made up of 5 members. Like they have appointed a group of 5 members which will have power to enact any kind of law, and they will be appointed from the suggestions of legislative assembly, and that is why they have such many conflicts with the legislative assembly, and this make France a very fragile government, and its advantage was taken by the Napoleon Bonaparte, and this political instability of directory paved the way for rise of military dictator, that was Napoleon Bonaparte, and that is how the French Revolution was ended and Napoleon Bonaparte seized the power in France in 1804.